It is 6 p.m. We will call the 8th meeting of the County Board to order at this time. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Roll call shows 3 supervisors absent, Supervisor Flater, Supervisor Eisenhuth, and Supervisor Hunt.
At this time, I would seek a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Supervisor Steele, second by Bowman.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd make a motion at this point for the approval of the agenda.
Okay. I was going to say, any further discussion? So,
At this point, I'd make a motion that we postpone for 1 month until the September scheduled meeting, and I don't have the date in front of me. Business items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'll repeat that for the clerk. Make a motion to postpone for 1 month business items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The reason being is that it's my understanding in business item number 2 that there might be some legalities involved, that there's ordinance already set forth requiring certain spending of sales tax monies for the county. I'd like to get more time and clarification as to the legalities of that. The following business items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are also pending upon the approval of business item number 2, or have direct impact thereupon.
I'll second that.
okay. Seconded by Supervisor Sikorsky. Any further discussion?
Can I speak towards it? Pete?
I think this is just a motion on the floor at this point.
Yeah.
For the members, it's up to the chair if you want to recognize them, it's up to you.
I'd just like clarification. That's all I'm looking for.
Okay, go ahead.
Because if you postpone, I'm going to need to know what you want answers to. So what's your questions for number 2, I guess?
Number 2, is it my understanding, am I correct, that there is an ordinance requiring all monies gathered through the sales tax to be spent in emergency situations only if they are for operating expenditures?
No, absolutely not.
That is not the case.
Nope, I sent that out to the county board explaining the ordinance, the changes. No, you can spend it for what we're spending it for. And that,
Is it possible to pull that ordinance up?
I'm sure we could, yeah. Yeah, we got my memo, would that work?
Oh, sorry. We don't usually have conversations. Let me.
Just discussing the motion to 2-476.
Tracy's gonna bring that. Do you want me to put the ordinance on that screen?
Sure.
If you have it.
I mean, I can look it up real quick.
I mean, what I have on the screen is the memo that will be sent out to the board, and this is the last,
2-361.
the last amendment that was made to the ordinance.
2-3.
I would, yeah.
I'm pulling it up.
There you go, just 2-360.
Blow it up.
You got it. Good.
So where you see it's used for property tax credit, that sales tax is used to offset expenditures for the county. So that goes towards wages, exactly what Resolution 2 is doing. That's what that is. So it's being used, it's been used since 1999 for that purpose.
So clarification, we've been paying wages from the property, from the sales tax revenue since 1999.
I believe so. My memo had the date on it. I can look at it quick.
And I don't want to speak out of turn. There's other people that are
No, that's fine.
chiming.
Yeah, I believe it was 1999 is when they enacted that.
Can you clarify, any, so out of, said the 1 million?
Well, anything that, it required a minimum of $1 million, but then you can do whatever you want for sales tax, but it has to be a minimum. So it doesn't have a maximum, so you could add as much as you wanted to that sales tax credit to offset expenditures, and expenditures are, it doesn't say you can't spend them on wages or fringe benefits or anything like that, so that's what it's been used for. Like I said, I'd have to, 98, let me see. That was 90. Yeah, so it was ordinance 0901, was passed on September 19, 2001, is when that was, it looks like it was enacted. No, it was in 98. It was in 98, yep. Resolution 1898, and then resolution was passed, and then they included in 2021 ordinance. They've been using, you guys, the Chippewa County's been using that since it was enacted for that purpose. And that's exactly what is being used for number 2. And sales tax has nothing to do with those other positions.
Indirectly, I would argue that it does, since they're being initially funded through Chippewa County, then reimbursed by the federal government.
No, they're not being funded by Chippewa County in any way.
In no way does Chippewa County paying these persons wages or salaries.
No. I got Paul, please come up.
Well, I can't get into that right now because it's not,
It is, it's all part of the motion.
it's not, the motion is simply postponement.
I know, but you can discuss the motion. That's part of the motion.
Should be focusing on whether or not to adjourn the hearing, adjourn the issues, the resolutions to September 12th, 2023. Should be focusing on that. Debate should be whether or not you should postpone this matter. Depends on how much leeway you want to take on that as far as you go.
I concur.
Speak in the mic, please. I can't really.
You should be limiting your discussion to whether or not the motion to postpone till September 12th, 2023, and why you want to do it. The leeway of how far you want to go with that is up to the chair, but really should be focusing on whether or not to postpone this. I think that the movement has explained why he wants to, and then the chair or the county board county administrator has explained that in his opinion, the first $1 million is essentially credit to the tax levy, ergo that money can then be used for operations and I assume operations and salaries.
Okay, I concur with corporate counsel on that. And I think what we're looking for is a legal definition, which is something that we certainly aren't going to sit and try to saddle our corporate counsel with here. This takes some research. So we would have to confine our discussion now to whether we postpone this not to try to get that information or we go forward. And then, so Buck is first.
I just want to make a statement. That's been amended, I don't know how many times it's been originally put together. And it was originally put together to build the jail. I'm reminded about that at least once a month from some of the folks. And we have eroded the spirit of what it was intended for so many times, it's totally unclear. And I'd like a better understanding myself. And the second thing is Supervisor Tudelberg said 3 through 9, they were covering them all, and they're really, there's some for the, for our particular Department of Human Services that are not funded. The county's paying for them 100%.
No, still Medicare, Medicaid.
You know, the administrative assistant.
Yep, everything we presented to you at the last presentation is all Medicare, Medicaid for all these positions.
So in other words, that has to do with the
Program.
program. One program. 150 more people.
Well,
for
there's
one
a
program.
lot more than one program.
Okay, again, we do need to confine to the issue of adjournment. So,
Mr. Chair, can you just speak into the microphone? I can't hear you either.
okay. Yes, we do need to confine the discussion as to the amendment, and that's the motion to suspend that until the next meeting to get these questions answered. I move to Ken Schmidt. You want to address that issue?
I see no reason to postpone this. 2 has no bearing on the rest of the agenda items. And I think the ordinance speaks for itself. I think that's pretty plain. And Randy's letter from 2-3 weeks ago is very well done, and I think it explained the sales tax and its history very well.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Tuderberg?
I'm hung up right here on point 5, section 2, 361, sub A, sub 1, sub A, sub 5. Again, sub A, sub 3, sub B, sub 5, which basically requires all expenditures. Keep going. Thank you. Yeah, right there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, go down, sub 5, parent 5, all the way down.
Parent.
Keep going, right there. That, in essence, money is collected, can't be spent until 2 years after gathered, after taking it, correct?
Correct, that's
But
what we,
we're earmarking that money for payment next year?
nope. It has to be incurred in, let's say 2020, we can spend it in 2022. So we know how much money we have to spend in advance.
Right. So we're spending money from 2 years ago now,
Correct.
is what we're doing.
Yep.
And there's no legality in terms of what can be spent and where for emergency purposes or
I don't think there's,
definitions laid forth under sub 3, sub A, sub 1, I'm sorry, sub 3, sub B, sub 1, where it gives definition of capital asset.
that's one of the things that can be spent on, correct.
So capital asset includes, in your opinion, salaries and benefits.
Nope, not capital assets. Anything used for tax relief can, as a revenue source is used, we don't use that for capital projects.
We don't use sales tax for capital projects.
No, we do use sales tax, but we use the tax, what they defined back then as tax levy credit at $1 million minimum, and it's more than that, and it's been more than that for a very long time, can be used for expenditures. So salaries and fringes, that's how it's incorporated in our budget currently. Maybe Lori can explain it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm not doing a good job explaining that.
Again,
Explain where that.
again, we have to confine as to the extension as to if we're going to move it on.
I know, but you guys got to know why you're moving it on or not. I mean,
I think that's why it's being asked to be held for a month.
I need to know what you.
I don't want to get this into a full debate, having all of our department staff coming and talking this either. I don't know if I can underneath the protocol,
I don't know why not.
and I will check with corporate
Well,
counsel.
like I said, it's up to you how much leeway you want to get. Randy's, yeah, the county administrator is saying is that he's trying to explain, trying to address Mr. Tuber's concerns. I think, and I'm just trying to move this along, but I think what the hangup is under one, why the property tax credit is essentially being used for operations. Is that what you need to explain, Randy, I think?
Yes, it's been used, like I said, for operations since 1999.
And the reason I'm asking, I guess, it brass tacks to postpone this, or at least for, till next month, not at least, but until next month, is so we can get clarification from corp counsel that this is being done properly by ordinance. I would hate to have something passed and we're in violation of ordinance. And I guess we may be at loggerheads right now as to the legalities of this.
Well, if we are, we've been in violation since 1998.
Correct.
It's your ordinance. It's the county board ordinance. They can do with it what you want.
Right, then we'd have to change the ordinance to be in compliance if we are in violation. I'm just asking for clarification. I'm not saying that this is deep sixth. I'm saying I'm asking for clarification from corporation counsel or higher, should it be necessary.
Can you answer that, Jim?
Me?
Do you feel comfortable answering it or not?
I don't, because the way I always looked at this was a property tax credit, right? And Lori can explain what that means. Property tax credit applied to the levy, the county levy. You could explain how that plays out, because.
Apparently we can't, so.
Yeah, so at this point, I guess maybe Todd can weigh in on this. I've just, it's right in front of me tonight. I mean, I've always had trouble understanding this, because my understanding was the first million went to apply as a property tax credit. That means it's reducing the levy that we are collecting from the citizens, I think. Okay? And it was never, the other, number 3, was never meant to be used as operations or anything like that. Whether or not the practical implication was by reducing the levy by $1 million, we were using that for operations. That was never the intent. I was brought into these questions starting in 1998. Can we use this under sub 3 or its different iterations for different projects? But I was never told that essentially what we were doing under sub 2 was we were reducing the levy to that was being collected so that we could then use that as operations. And if that's practically what's happening, I'll have Lori explain that. She's been doing this longer than that. She was actually here when this ordinance, when the original ordinance to fund the building was passed.
Right, so what happens is we take, let's just say you had 5 million of sales tax revenue in 2020. So then what happens is you take that for the 2022 budget. What we're doing is we're saying we're taking at least $1 million as a property tax credit, which goes, it reduces the tax levy that all those other departments are putting in for their budgets, whether it's all the other operational, like in the sheriff's department, it's wages, salaries, food and all that kind of stuff. So that's really what happened. Then that remaining $4 million was in the past was paid for other sales, other projects, CIP projects.
So, again, I don't want to speak out of turn. This, under sub 2, the first $1 million, and stop me if we're going too far, Mr. Chair. This first $1 million can be put basically towards anything because you're offsetting that, but yet I'm hung up on the 1.5 million cost.
That's not, so that is amended to say a minimum of $1 million. That, the first is not in there.
Okay.
Ordinance says
Right.
minimum of, so you have to at least spend $1 million towards that purpose. You can spend as much as you want past that, but a minimum you have to spend $1 million for that purpose.
Okay,
That's
to
the ordinance.
to try to clarify and get us back on track, so the motion is to suspend it till next month to answer a legal question. Okay, and we have various opinions, various staff that have had this deal, but guess what? We need a legal opinion. So that's what we can discuss. So next on the list is Supervisor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 quick questions. I'll keep it brief. Is there additional information to be shared with us outside of what was emailed on June 22nd?
I don't have any additional information, no.
And then the set follow-up question is, to your knowledge, has Attorney Paul's ever read this? And if so, has he ever expressed concern over it?
He has not, he would have put the ordinance together when it was presented.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I have to type it in now.
Okay, you gotta type it in. And then when you get in, could you read them?
I have the motion to postpone until September 12th meeting business items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
I don't think
2,
2, 4. Oh, okay.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, we'll call the vote. Those in favor of the amendment, press the green button. Those opposed, press red. Yes.
Motion failed. 9 yes, 9 no.
Okay. Then back to the, we're at the original. Approval of the agenda. Back to the approval agenda. Any further discussion on the approval agenda? Hearing none, then we'd call for the vote for the agenda approval. Green to approve, red to disapprove. Yes.
17 yes, 1 no.
Okay, agenda is approved. Members of the public wish to be heard. I believe Lisa Westman. Is she-
Could I speak from back here? Okay, I've never done this before.
That's okay. We have a microphone here so they can hear you. That'd be great.
A couple of you know me, so it makes me feel better. Hi, I'm here to speak on business item 11, restructuring the deputy clerk position for a second deputy clerk. I'm a municipal clerk for the town of Estella. I'm a municipal clerk treasurer. I've been that since 2019. It is hard. It is hard when you're in a small town and you don't have a lot of, that you can go to for answers. And the county clerk's office is incredible. I cannot say enough about Jackie and Lisa and Amanda. They are lifesavers to all of us little potatoes. And we have 4 elections next year. And I have a full-time job outside of doing this, but if I didn't do it, who would? And I really care about it, and elections are super important to me. I volunteer, I think, every public test. I move all the machines. I'm happy to do it. And I know things have changed in the Veterans Department where Amanda's time isn't needed so much there. And I really want you all to consider going forward with this restructuring. I can hear the nerves in my voice, I'm sorry. Amanda is fantastic. I think of her as my go-to for any questions I have with absentees. She is the absentee ballot log person. And as you know, in the past few years, we have dealt with a lot of absentees. Even my little teeny tiny town of under 500 people, I had over 60 absentees one of the elections. And I feel like with all the more eyes on us, we all want to do a great job, and having that support system in the county is so important. And having an extra person there full time would be great. And I was reading through all the documentation that Jackie attached as part of that. And when you see all the responsibilities that they do outside of elections, I mean, it is a busy office. They're licensing and taking really, really good passport photos. I can vouch for that myself. And handling all the things, handling all the payroll and all that. You know, it's so many things. I joke with my own board. It's the clerk that does the work. You guys make the decisions. You do all that important stuff, but we're there staying up late. You know, election nights are ridiculous all across the county and the state and the country. And I can't say enough great things about Amanda in particular. So that's all I wanted to say as a member of the public. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Okay. We will move on to the consent agenda. I would seek a motion at this time to approve the consent agenda.
Supervisor Bergeron motions to approve.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Okay. McGill, yes, I've got McGill, second. Okay, then we'll call the vote. Push green to approve, red to disapprove. Okay, agenda is approved.
18 yes, 0 no.
Then we'll move on to reports. Update on the sketch forensic review and fraud prevention. Randy.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to bring this back to the board. We reported on this with the previous board, and we did an update or informed this current board during orientation, but you had a long orientation. So I just wanted to make sure we revisit this so you feel comfortable with some of the decisions you have to make later on in this agenda. So back in 2018, I attended a training that was put on by Sickage, and it was about fraud, and they're there to basically scare you and say this can happen anywhere at any time in any place, and they did a good job of that. But what really caught my attention was my colleagues that I was sitting with. There was about 6 of them on a table, and each one of them had a fraud story for me. And then I started thinking about it, and I had a fraud story in my previous county. So that really got me thinking of being proactive. And we have a great auditor that's going to be coming up and talking later, but a forensic audit is deep diving audit. It's not what the regular auditors come in and do. They'll pull invoices, they'll track down making sure they're paid correctly, making sure there's a company there. Obviously, with a lot of stuff that's been in the news lately, especially with one of our neighboring counties, I just wanted to ensure the county board that we take this very seriously and we're very proactive in this. So the first thing I did is I surprised Central Finance and the county treasurer in 2019 without informing them that they're going to have a forensic audit, which you can imagine how that went over, but that's the way you have to do it, right? You can't tell people you're coming in to do a forensic audit. And then we moved forward in 2021 and we did Human Services Department. Once you do a forensic audit, you do want to advertise that to your employees so they know that there are agencies that are coming and going to do the deep dive. So that helps prevent continuing if there's any fraud or any concern. Then we did Land Conservation Forest Management Department. And then we kind of put in the links to that, and you can see those presentations. Then move forward with department head training, and then also all full-time and part-time employees. We had additional training there. One of the recommendations from Sickage was to incorporate a fraud hotline, and we did that in 2023. Is that what they went live, 2023? So there's an anonymous way that anybody can report that. We trained our employees on that. So if we wouldn't know if there was anything done. We have a third party that takes those calls, and then depending on who the complaint's about, it depends on who they contact. So obviously the complaint's about me or Lori, they would contact Corp Counsel or the county board chair, or however we have it set up. There is no way we can get involved in the investigation or find out about it until the proper people have been notified. So just wanted to make sure that the county board understood that, we take this stuff very serious and we've been doing it proactively. We didn't wait till something happened or there was a problem or anything like that. We did it ahead of time. So any questions on that?
Okay, seeing none, move on to number 2.
Number 2, again, was a letter in the packet. A little unique situation in the fact that this position is no longer a county position. The county board decided to change that, and it went down to a .8 position at the time. I believe in that resolution, it was to be reviewed after 6 months. I think Mr. Schmidt made that motion, maybe. So we did review it, obviously going through the budget process, talked to the current leader down there and came up with this idea of moving it to a 1.0 without them needing to have any levy in 2024. And then they would have to add about $2,900 anticipated for 2025. The way, if you don't want to do this, you would take this out during the budget hearing. So if you're not in favor of it, you would just take it out, someone would make a motion, and then we wouldn't move forward with it. So just wanted to make the county board aware of it and anticipate that it's in the budget, but that's the way it would be removed because it's not a resolution, it's not a county position. Any questions on that? All right.
Okay. All righty, go down to department reports and the 2022 audit report.
Good evening. I want to introduce April Anderson. She's been with Clifton Larson Allen for a lot of years. Sorry, I don't know the number of years, but she will give you our audited 2022 financial statement.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. As Lori said, I will be going over the results of the 2022 financial statements for the county and the audit of 2022. So what you'll see here is the executive audit summary, we call it. So your full financial statements and audit reports are 80 plus pages. And so we pull out the key pieces of information that we feel are necessary for you to know as the governing board. Obviously, if you do have any questions about the overall report, it is some good reading, a lot of useful information. But again, we'll try to condense it here for those key pieces of the results. So in the second paragraph here, the audit opinion, we issued an unmodified audit opinion on your financial statements for 2022. And so that is the highest opinion you can receive or considered a clean opinion. And so that's obviously what you're striving for, and that means your financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and the governmental audit or accounting standards that you have to follow. As we do go through the audit, we are required to look at your internal controls over financial reporting, and then because of the funding, the federal and state funding that you receive, grant funding, we also do look at compliance and internal controls over compliance of those funding programs. And so with that, we don't have any specific items to report, either in the internal controls over financial reporting or the compliance on the grant funding. So obviously, strong results there that we don't have anything specific to identify there and report to you. In the past, I did want to mention that we had issued a significant deficiency for lack of segregation of duties. However, to some of those points that Randy had pointed out, with the additional steps you guys have taken in the past few years and changes that have been made, we did remove that. That doesn't necessarily mean that in some instances there isn't maybe, some crossover, but on a high level and what we feel is significant for the county, we feel that there are good controls and processes in place. So those are the high-level results. We'll move down to page 7, where we'll get into some of the actual numbers and results of the financials. Thank you. So the first item that we look at is the general fund. So the county reports in different buckets of activities. And so your general fund is your main operating fund. And here you'll see that we have 4 years shown, so you can see how things have changed over the last few years and if there's any trends to note. I won't go over every line on this page, but just wanted to point out maybe a few of the bigger changes. In the top half, it's your assets. And so you can see there that the cash and investments in the general fund actually decreased quite a bit from 21 to 22. However, you can also see the second from the bottom line in that section, due from other funds, went up from $600,000 to $6.8 million. So what that is that at the end of the year, the consortium, the WRRWC, was waiting on cash and grants funding to come in. And so it had a lack of cash in the fund. And so your general fund was basically loaning an interfund loan kind of to that other fund in operation of the county. So, and that's very common. And then there was also an $830,000 cash deficit at 12/31 in human services too. That makes up some of that. So that's really where you're seeing most of the change there in your assets. But what we do focus on here in this section is really in the fund balance section. So fund balance is those assets, less your liabilities, and what's kind of really available to the county, what's been built up over time. And so you can see at the very bottom line that your revenues exceeded your expenditures your expenditures exceeded revenues for 2022 by $1.4 million. So your overall fund balance actually went down by that $1.44 million, and that was mostly due to a decrease in the fair value of investments at that point in time. And so this is as of 12/31. Since then, we know that your investments have increased in the value, so we'll see that bounce back most likely in 2023. But as of 12/31/22, that was the end result there of the decline of $1.4 million. So when you do look at that fund balance and that it did decrease by that much, there is, though, a breakout in the fund balance categories. So your overall fund balance of $22 million is split into a non-spendable portion. So that is items up in your assets that aren't really available to be spent. So prepaid items, the cash is gone. Delinquent taxes, that's not really in an available form in the near future. So those are broken out, and you have about 1.3 million there. Then you also have $8.4 million set aside as assigned fund balance. And so that is what the board has approved certain purposes for this funding to be used for. And so the details of what that 8.4 million is made of is on page 51 and 52 of the overall financial statements and audit report. And some of the bigger items that you've identified these funds to be used for is there's $400,000 set aside for a security plan, $1.75 million for Sheriff's Department equipment and tower. And then you also have about $1.4 million set aside for unfunded benefit liabilities. So what your employees have earned that will be paid out into the future. So you're being prudent there as far as being able to set aside some of those funds for those expenses that you know will occur in the future. So ultimately what that gets you down to then is that unassigned fund balance where you're at $12.491 million. And so there, that we compare that unassigned fund balance to your annual expenditures for the year, and you're at that 32%. So you'll see that that did go down from 39% last year to 32%. However, the policy, the county's policy, is 25 to have that at 25 to 33%. So you're right in the range that you want it to be at, and that's kind of the general recommendation that that the GFOA and we provide as well, is that 25 to 33%. Generally, you have in a lot of the counties that we work with in Northwest Wisconsin are about 35 to 40% where that range is. So generally, you've been right around that, and you're right at the level that you would like to see. So those are the results for the general fund. So even though you did see that decline, we do expect the investments to come back in 2023, and your fund balance, though, overall is still at a good level. In this next section, item number 2, we look at your special revenue funds. So this is where certain revenues are set aside for particular activities. So they're kind of self-sustaining funds. So here you'll see, I won't go over all of these either, but just hit on some of the bigger ones. Human Services has a fund balance of $104,000 at the end of the year, so that increased by $30,000. That does include a transfer from the general fund of $465,000. So that's very common that sometimes when you have really high costs in human services, that the general fund will have to transfer funding over to help with covering some of those costs. So you did $465,000 this year. There was $400,000 transferred last year and $250,000 transferred the year before. So, and then in 2019, you actually didn't have to transfer anything. So again, that it's kind of dependent on the services that you're providing, the needs of the constituents in that particular area. The second item down is your county sales tax fund. And so this is where that activity is accounted for. And so in 2022, you brought in about $8.3 million of revenues in county sales tax. And you transferred out $2.8 million to the general fund, $1.8 million to debt service, and then another $1.875 million to highway. And so you'll see that that fund balance did increase then at the in 2022 to that $14 million. Then the other couple that I wanted to mention are down a little bit further, and that American Rescue Plan Act. So in the last 2 years, 21 and 22, you received about $12 million overall from that stimulus funding. And so you'll see that your balance in that fund is only at $26,000, but that's because that funding doesn't get recognized until you spend it. So you actually have about $10 million in cash there and $10 million of unearned revenue yet until you apply it against those expenditures that you've identified. And then the very last one that I wanted to mention is the opioid one. That is a new fund in 2022 due to that settlement that occurred in the first payment that came in that you'll be seeing now into the next 10, 15, 16 maybe years it is. And so that is what that one is a new fund there. The next section that we have are your capital projects funds. And so here, it's exactly for that purpose. Generally, debt is issued or maybe transfers in from the sales tax fund to fund capital projects that you have. And so in the current year, you'll see that you did issue $3 million. And so that is sitting there as a balance in the 2022 capital projects fund to be used for those capital expenditures that as you incur them in the future. Then the next item is your debt service fund. And so that is for that particular purpose of either levying or transferring funds over to pay for your principal and interest annually. So generally, you don't have necessarily too much of a fund balance in most of those. However, there is the one that does have a little bit built up because of premiums and refundings that have occurred in the past, and that can be used then to pay for principal and interest in the future. So in 2022, out of this fund, you paid $1.5 million in principal, and you paid $279,000 of interest on your outstanding debt there. Then we get into your farmland development fund, which is reported as an enterprise fund. And so here you'll see that you increased your net position by $330,000, and that was due to some sales of land and property in the current year. You've had in the last couple of years quite a bit of activity in this fund, mostly in TIF 14 out in the Wissota, or the farmland development, the Wissota Business Park area. Then you report 4 internal service funds, which are considered more in operations of like providing services within the county or to other governmental entities. And so here you have your highway department. And we show a little bit more detail. We have the balance sheet, but I am going to just kind of move down to the income statement summary and the results there. And that overall, you had an operating loss of $4 million. However, and this is very common in counties, that the operations then are subsidized somewhat by maybe some county sales tax activity or other activity being moved into there. And so you'll see that ultimately, though, your change in net position was a positive $185,000. And that was after some ARPA money was moved in there for purposes that you had approved of $1.3 million. Sales tax of the $1.875 million that I mentioned already. And then there was also $1.3 million from the capital projects funds. So debt that had been issued moved into there to pay for some of the capital projects occurring in that fund. What we do look at for a benchmark in the highway department, because of the way it's reported, is called the current ratio. And so that's your current assets compared to your current liabilities. So how liquid really is this fund. And so when we look at the current assets to your current liabilities, you want that to be at least 1-to-1, and you're at 4.0 in 2022, and it was about 5.4 in 2021. So you have available assets to pay for your current liabilities in that fund for that activity. Then the next fund that you report is a self-funded workers' comp. And you'll see here that the fund or the net position decreased by $138,000. You had kept that level at an unrestricted or at net position of $1 million. Because in 2019, you passed a policy that you wanted this to be at least $500,000 sitting in there for that particular activity, but a max of $1 million. So you're at $861,000 is where it ended at the end of 2022, between the $500,000 and the $1 million that you've set as a goal to have in there for that activity. Then we have the self-funded health insurance, which was brought back. You started it up last year by transferring some funding into there, and then 2022 was your actual first year of that activity. And so you'll see that you ended with positive net position there of $2.8 million. So positive results there. And then you have that available for if you have bad clean years and that sort of thing. So The next one is your self-funded liability insurance. So this ended with a unrestricted net position of $27,000 for the year. And you had some bad claim years kind of in the last couple of years. And so you did increase the funding in the 2023 budget. So didn't quite see maybe all of that yet in 2022, but the funding has been increased in 2023. And in the past, your allocation was generally for premiums. And so you took a look at how that was kind of coming out in the last couple of years, and you decided to now you include claims in the allocation. So that brought that back up a little bit, and then as you do move forward into the results for 2023, the results should be better as well, and a better allocation of that activity. Then the very last one that you have is your flexible benefits fund, section 125 plan. And so here, generally, very minimal changes from year to year. So you have some net position in there of 91,000, which was an increase of 7,000 from last year. So those are all the different funds that the county reports and the different activities of the operations of the county. The very last item that we like to summarize here for you is just your long-term obligations that the county is responsible for paying into the future. So you have your general obligation notes, which is a little over 10 million is the outstanding balance at the end of 2022. And that's with the $3 million that you issued, as well as obviously you made your principal and interest payments that I had mentioned already. And so every county, municipality, school district in the state has a debt limit, which for a county, it's 5% of the equalized value of the property in the county. And so their 10 million outstanding is about 2.5% of your debt limit. So you're at a very low level there. With the counties that we work with in Northwest Wisconsin, generally they do range between 0 to 20%. Some that might have a little bit of bigger capital projects taking place might get up there higher to the 20% range. But generally, it's at a low level, and you're right there with what we generally see. Then the next line item, a small balance there, lease liability. This was a new standard that was implemented, one of those governmental accounting standards that I mentioned. So that's just a new little balance that you'll see now going forward for that. And then the vested employee benefit items, you'll see there is the estimated balance of $2 million for the general county, and then about $586,000 for the highway of what your employees have earned for vacation, sick, PTO type time to be paid in the future. But what I had mentioned about this type of payment that this liability is estimated at, you do have funds set aside in your general fund for those payments out as they do become payable in the future. So those are the overall results for the county for 2022. Again, even though you did see some declines in some fund balance or net position of some of the funds, really the balances are still good, and you're still at a good level of where your goals are with your policies and what we expect to see. So I don't know if there's anything else.
Supervisor Sikorsky?
I see our unassigned fund balance really dipped as a percentage, which we have been really working hard to build over the years. And by doing that, we had actually improved our credit rating. Mm-hmm. By dropping like that, are we in any danger of losing that in terms of costing us more to borrow money?
And I don't necessarily get involved in the credit ratings with Moody's or S&P or whoever it is, but I don't know that they would necessarily, there's usually a story that you have to tell. So they might look at that number, but they might ask for the story behind of what's happening or, why the reason might be. But it's still they also look at that 25 to 35% as well. And so, as I said, you're still at that goal and at that level that they generally see. And so I don't think it would necessarily affect your rating just with that drop this year in 2022. Again, they look at other factors as well. And I don't know if you've been on any discussions with them or.
Yes, so
Recently?
actually, Brad from Baird has actually talked to us about this. And he said that there has been many other municipalities that have been going out for debt and having that same issue with the investments, with the reduction. That's really what caused our, so remember, it was 1.4 that we had lost. I mean, we only went down like not even quite 400,000. So remember, a lot of it was just due to that reduction in the financial, in our investments. So he said that many other counties are in the same boat, so it's been talked about during the rating with Moody's. So.
Buck?
I was gonna ask a question about the same subject. All the time I've been on a board, we said we had to keep it up around 35%, in order to get top rating. And we're not. That's a 25%. I've never heard that figure before when we start talking about rating. So, what's going on?
So the auditors have always told us that they would like the 25 to 33. Us as a county in the financial area, we've always wanted to keep it more around the 35 to 40 range, because then we know we're more fiscally sound. So we're just trying to take that into consideration. And something else that really kind of blew me away too when I looked at these reports is the expenditures. I mean, you're talking over $6 million of expenditures increasing, and a lot of it has to do with, I think, the money that we spent over at the highway department. So that's really something that's out of my control to either we don't fix roads or, so I'm struggling of where to, because what we're putting in for roads, that's what's affecting that number in that expenditures area. So I agree, Buck. I wish I could fix it, but I think it's the lesser of the evil. I think a main thing that they're really looking at too when they're looking at our bond rating is making sure that the unassigned is just incrementally increasing is really what they're looking for. And with this reduction, I think we have a very plausible reason to the rating agency.
Yeah, because that percentage is a direct factor of your expenses going up by that much, which how it is reported is that some of those highway expenditures are pulled into the general fund in the way that it's reported as an internal service fund. So, but again, I know I haven't been on one of your calls necessarily, but there is usually a story that you can tell behind it. So that's kind of what we're trying to tell too, as far as even though it went down. And is a little bit lower than the 35% that you've generally been at. It's still at a good level, plus the expectation in 2023 of those investments going back up will result in good results.
All right. Thank you. All righty. Go to number 2. I hope everyone has had the opportunity to read the attendance. So, policy. And the reason I bring it up is because we have some board members who are in violation of that attendance rate. So I would recommend that you suggest that you look at that. This is again going to be an issue on the executive committee agenda, because when we discussed this last time, we had the parameters, but we didn't set penalties. And now, because we are seeing violations, we're going to have to take that next step. So pay attention to the policy for attendance and make sure that you're diligent on that. Phone calls, emails, to me or to Jackie. So we know, again, we always end up, especially with the committees, playing this quorum game. We get 5-person committees, and it doesn't take much to lose that quorum. And so if I'm notified, I can always fill in for that position. But if I'm not notified and I don't know about it, then we end up losing them. So take a look at that. It is an issue. For the lucky people on the executive committee, we're going to have to take the next hard step. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, yes.
Bunch of question. Can we get a response back? You know, I've sent stuff in and I hear nothing. So I'm assuming that it's getting to you, you know, Dean and Jackie. I assume it's getting you, but I don't know that. All you could send back and say thank you, or I got it, or something like that. Help me know if you're getting what I said no or not.
Okay. Yeah, and if, in my case, if, you know, if for some reason, you know, you were absent, whatever, I would definitely check on that just to make sure. I would go back and, so when we do have that, I do go back through my emails just to make sure that something didn't come in there that I missed. But so far, you know, those who have used the email, it's been very well, I've received. And Jackie, I think you're pretty much the same? Okay. But it has become an issue, so now, you know, we have to address it. Supervisor Ives?
Yeah, I just wanted to say on that too. It's been really difficult for some of the committees that I chair because they don't let me know, or you know, or Jackie know, and we're sitting there, and it could be about ready for the meeting to start, and you don't have quorum. I mean, there's been a few times where like we're gonna call to see if Dean's in the building somewhere so he can come up, and so yeah, it's been difficult for some of the committees that I chair because they're not communicating with me either.
Okay.
As chair, so.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. All right, move on to business items. 2823 resolution, establish insurance plan funding. First, the clerk.
Resolution number 28-23, resolution to establish health insurance plan funding for 2024, read by title only.
Okay, I would seek a motion to approve.
Omar moves.
Omar moves to approve. And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Randy?
All right, I'll have Tony come up and explain it.
Good evening. As the resolution illustrates, there's actually a recommendation for no change. So at this time, the plan design would stay the same from 2023's plan to 2024, as well as the premium amount for employees, which is $0 premium for general municipal employees, and then per contract for WPPA. And then the costs are all illustrated, the same costs from plan year to plan year in the resolution. Any questions?
Okay, seeing none, we will move on to vote. Did you have more to add, Randy?
No, I do.
Okay. All right, so at this time then, to approve, press green, disapprove, press red. Okay, business item number 2. Oh, go ahead, release. I see this long agenda, and so I'm always going to.
18 yes, 0 no.
Okay. Passes. Okay, now on to resolution 2923.
Resolution number 29-23, Resolution to approve levy and sales tax, property tax credit for annual and market analysis compensation study salary adjustments in 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that $225,000 of levy funding is hereby approved to be included in the 2024 proposed county budget to be used to cover the costs of across-the-board wage adjustments commencing on July 1, 2024. And be it further resolved that approximately $1,493,970 of sales tax, property tax credit is hereby approved to be included in the 2024 proposed county budget to be used to cover the anticipated costs of the market analysis, compensation study adjustments, and salary schedule adjustments commencing January 1, 2024, forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear motion to approve?
Supervisor Bergeron motions to approve.
Is there a second?
Berg seconds.
Okay.
Okay, this resolution is, part of it you see every year is across the board wage increases. We did build in the budget of 3%, that up one in front of all the committees. Resolution also has the market analysis compensation study increase that we've talked about over the last year. Everything is completed with the market analysis and comp study. And for this resolution, you heard the clerk talk about the property tax credit / sales tax amount of the 1.5 million roughly. And then if you take into account the next resolution, that will go up to about 1.6 total. Any questions?
Any questions? I would just have one, and so I'm turning this over to Mr. Schmidt to do the vote on this, because it's the protocol, since I speak on this. This is one of the questions that came forward with a legal question on it that was voted on earlier. For those who don't know my background, I actually have the same degree as the administrator, criminal justice, but I also have 13 pages front and back of other courses and classes in various aspects of law enforcement, criminal law. I've been in, I taught testifying in court, course by the Wisconsin Department of Justice for the warden service at the Law Enforcement Academy. I have a long background in law enforcement and legal issues. And what I want to address here is that a question of legality was brought forward on this particular resolution. And in the discussion there, the only attorney in the room spoke and indicated that there's some fog here. There's some clarity needs to be made. And when I look at this, I'm going, we're talking property tax revenue. So we're dealing with about 64,000 people, which means we have possibly 64,000 litigants. And I look at this and I'm going, we can't wait 30 days to give our attorneys an opportunity to weigh in on this? That's reckless. That's reckless, folks. And that's why I'm bringing it to the attention. It's 30 days to ensure that we're not breaking the law. And let our corporate counsel, and you've seen our corporate counsel here many times, people have asked a question, give me the opportunity to research it. Yes.
I've been looking at this since we had the initial discussion.
Microphone, please.
I can project my voice. There's supposed to be a microphone up here. That's why you guys aren't using one. So anyway, all along, the first $1 million of county sales tax was to be used as an offset to the levy. And then it was supposed to be adjusted each year based on the CPI, the first $1 million. And so in March of 2020, that was changed and is very explicit in the ordinance that a minimum of $1 million of county sales tax is now can be used. So if that's why it's titled the way it is. what Randy is asking you, the county administrator is asking, is that you approve instead of the million, and this year you actually approve almost 1.5 million to be used as an offset, which will then be allowed to be used for levy, or I'm sorry, toward operations. So normally up until that ordinance changed, the first million was all that could be used with those CPI adjustments going back. And so that was eliminated on March 10th of 2020 when they removed the first and made it a minimum, and took out the references to the CPI adjustments. And so now it gives you, the county administrator, the ability to recommend it and you to approve instead of the first million plus the CPI adjustment is now as much as you determine. So you could determine in Lori's example, if it's 5 million of sales tax, you could determine essentially to take the first 4 million to be as a property tax credit off the levy. So what he's asking you to do today in this resolution is to use the first 1.5 as a levy, which allows more money to be used for essentially operations. It was difficult for me to get my head around until I was looking at this, and so I see the change that was made in 2020, and I was part of that because I think I probably was involved, but I never got my head around it. So now what you're essentially doing is you're allowing the board to set more property tax credit, ergo more money that can be used. Anything beyond and I'm not sure if there's more than the 1.5 million being asked as a property tax. I think that's all that's being asked. Anything beyond that now falls into the second sub 3 section that has to be used for either debt reduction, or debt payments or capital projects. So by passing this resolution, you're essentially authorizing, instead of the 1 million, now 1.5 million. So is that essentially correct? You're
mostly correct. The 1.6 million will be for the offset for the wage increase for the market analysis, but you currently in our budget, there's about you know the number? Yeah, I knew you'd look for it. It's around that $1.5 million that's already been approved as part of the previous budgets and included in this budget. It was 1.7. So that original 1 million grew to 1.7. This would be on top of that 1.7, what we're asking for in here. That's been built into the budget for 20 years.
Okay, super.
So just a minute, I'm on the floor yet.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So when, again, going back to this, we're treading on new turf. And again, it's not like we're asking you to kill this or anything like that. What the ask was to wait 30 days for corporate counsel to just cross the T's and dot the I's. Because if somebody would bring a suit, and you've got to stop and remember, every person who owns property, if they see an adjustment in that property tax credit on their property tax, they're going to be concerned. How come it's less or whatever? And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but when we make these kind of decisions, we need to make sure that we're on sound legal feet to do it. And so I have no problem with what's trying to be done here and other, as long as we can address the legality of it. And so that's my concern, is that if you move forward on something of this nature without legal, advice giving Todd or if it ended up being Jim to look into this just to cross the T's and dot the I's, if we don't do that, when it comes to sitting in the courtroom, they're going to say, were you in this boardroom on such and such a date? Insert your name. Yes or no? Yes. Did you hear a supervisor raise a concern about possible legality of what you're doing? Yes. Was the recommendation to pass it on to get legal advice on this within the next 30 days? Yes. And now, if they're filing a suit and they're going to say, so you couldn't wait 30 days to get legal advice, and then they insert your name, you can see the path that the attorney is going to go down, and they're going to look at you and they're going to say, this is negligence. This is negligence. It was brought to your attention and you didn't address it. So that's my say on that. Mr. Schmidt, it's all yours from here on out.
Supervisor Bergeron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I understood correctly in the last comments, because this was, not even, anything considered when this passed executive last week. It sounds like there has been an additional meeting regarding the topic, so I'd be really curious about who was involved in that meeting and the attorney, questioning, our legality of using the ordinance in this manner would be, of interest to me. Anybody has that?
The question was brought forward by a supervisor.
I heard that we had attorneys questioning us in the past comment.
No, what I was saying, if you were being questioned, I was using an example. If you were called in on a civil case, like has happened for those who've been on the board, and you have to testify, that's the road that's gonna go down. Were you here, blah, 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 and then when they turn the hot seat on, that hot seat is gonna say, and you couldn't wait 30 days to get a written legal opinion from your corporate counsel?
Did our corp counsel not write the ordinance?
That's irrelevant. The issue is the concern of the legality. You can't expect an attorney to look at every aspect of it. When you get a question on a law, they have to go back and they gotta look at case law, they gotta look at all this other stuff. You can't expect an attorney to just pick up a document and read it and know all that case law. When a question arises, question comes up, then it is our responsibility to make sure that we cross our Ts and dot our Is. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, for the most part. No, and I've been in, when this went through, I think Randy put this together. I've been through the workflow process. And it's in this, if you look at the statement of explanation, it was stated that it would provide the county with more flexibility in putting budgets together going forward. So as I stated, originally it was the first million with CPI adjustments each year. And now it gives a minimum. That's really what's changed. And so it allows you to then essentially use it more of it toward a credit toward the levy, which would be collected, which is then can be used as operations and salaries.
Oh, Mr. Schmidt.
Supervisor Teuteberg?
I have my question answered, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote then. Green in favor and red opposed.
Wait for the clerk.
Catch up.
Trying to get us out of here.
I get it.
Today yet.
Got a new computer. It doesn't like me.
I have question or clarification. So,
Well,
what's the motion?
No.
to approve.
Approve the resolution.
Well, if you vote no, that means we're not doing wage increases. Just so you know. We have 420 employees that are waiting for this vote.
And they are watching.
Yes, they are.
I'd like to, Mr. Vice Chair, if I could make a statement, if that's possible.
I've called for the vote. I don't know, is that, Jim, is that kosher or not?
It's already open discussion. To
Yeah, it's up to the chair. I mean,
Well,
oh, people have a vote.
Yeah.
They said open the vote. I opened the vote.
Yep.
There you go.
I guess I asked finally. I can't, Rob. Sorry about that. Release votes, Jackie.
11 yes, 5 no, 2 abstain.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
Back in the seat. Okay, resolution 3023, number 3.
Resolution 30-23, resolution to approve funding for Jailer 2 positions with Wisconsin Law Enforcement Standards Board certification, shift differential pay in the jail and telecommunication divisions of the Sheriff's Department. Now therefore be it resolved that $108,000 of property tax credit funding is hereby approved to be included in the 2024 proposed county budget to be used to cover the anticipated costs of the Jailer 2 positions and the shift differential for non-exempt employees in the Jail and Emergency Communications Center, forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And the second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
This was, if you remember that letter I put out, this is the second part of that. We really worked with the sheriff's office to find a way, you know, we've had issues for years, everybody has, for jailers, tell the communication staff. So one of the things we came up with was try to have a jailer 2 position, which would be a higher paid position, and that means they're certified law enforcement, they get to carry a firearm. And then the dollar difference in shift pay for the 2 areas. So that's what the 108,000 is for.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Bishop?
Just, make sure I'm listening right, but this is coming from the same fund we were just talking about?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, then we'll call the vote. Those in favor, press green. Those not in favor, press red. All right. Oops.
Almost. Yep.
Okay.
Can I release?
Just release.
15 yes, 3 no.
Okay. Resolution 3123.
Resolution number 31-23, resolution to create 2 full-time comprehensive community services social worker positions in the Recovery and Wellness Consortium Division of the Department of Human Services. Now therefore be it resolved that effective January 1, 2024, 2 full-time social worker positions are hereby created in the Recovery and Wellness Consortium of the Department of Human Services to provide CCS services to adults and serve consumers as they become eligible. And be it further resolved that these positions be filled after January 1, 2024, and when consumer numbers dictate additional CCS social workers are needed. And be it further resolved that these positions shall be funded by using the Medicaid revenue generated by these positions, as well as the CCS reconciliation process. And be it further resolved that commencing in 2024, the Department of Human Services shall utilize the Medicaid revenue from state and federal funding sources to permanently fund these positions. And be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund these positions no longer be available or be reduced significantly, these positions may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I would approve.
Okay, George.
Bishop will second.
And Bishop seconds, okay. Discussion.
Thanks, Chair. As part of this resolution, and obviously the other ones coming up, I've asked Tim Easker to try and answer some of the questions that came from the previous presentation we had last month. So I hope, you know, with these answers and my presentation on sickage, that you guys have confidence that we're not operating like other counties. Thank you.
Okay, Tim.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I'd like to just appreciate everybody's kind of just goading us or coaxing us to get to look for some outcomes. And it was after the executive committee meeting last week, Tuesday, that as I was on my way home, I'm thinking, you know how mental health clinicians, they determine success through successful discharges. Just then, Jessica sends me a text saying, hey, I'm going to check on discharges. So we had that information available to us, and it was good for us to really kind of do a deeper dive and really have to think about this. So we ended up, Jessica put this document together. So we're looking at a consortium-wide discharges for 2022. Out of the 264 discharges, 33% recovered, no longer needed CCS. And I think, Chair, you had mentioned when you were talking about general substance use treatment, we were looking in the teens,
Yep.
15, 16%. So I think we're looking pretty good. I was very happy to see that number. And additionally, out of only 11% discharged needing a higher level of care, jail or prison. So when you look at it, there was only 8%, I believe, that ended up, or 3% that ended up going to jail or prison. Of course, we had those individuals who decided to end services on their own. That was 20%. We had an additional 16% that we were unable to contact as well. I think one of the other concerns was that this was actually a long-term support program when it's not made to be a children's long-term support. That's a different program. We're talking about comprehensive community services here, and that people were languishing in the program for quite a while. So what we found is that for youth, the average length of services was 2.2 years. For adults, it was 2 years. And of course, this is an average. So, you know, you've got some outliers, some folks that maybe were in a little longer. So, and as Jessica put in there, part of what we're looking at in 24 is starting to initiate a wraparound service where it's going to be a little more intensive involvement with the consumers and hopefully to move them through a little quicker as well. And the other one is at the bottom is that bar graph. It kind of gives you a good visual on the admissions versus the discharges. So as we move through the years, we're seeing 19 and 20, that was COVID. There was not as many discharges during those 2 years, but in 21, we started bumping up. 22, 23, you know, we're closing the gap a little bit. So we're seeing people moving through the program as well. Any questions about that? Any of the outcomes on that noted?
Supervisor Steele?
I would just like to speak about these jobs we're adding. I don't know how other supervisors do it, but I attend every one of the town meetings and the city meetings that I represent. And I go around and I talk to a lot of people. It's not in bars. I have voted in this room. If I was voting for me, I would have voted yes. But I voted for the people. That's what my job is. Vote for the people. And I voted no. My personal feelings don't come into this. So, I can tell you that there probably isn't 20% want this many people hired. We're talking about hiring how many now, 14 or something like that, or 15, or it's a lot of people. Everybody says, well, it's fully funded. Who's paying for Medicare, Medicaid? We are. So I'd like everybody to give us some good thought on what your constituents would like to see you do. Thank you.
I think we were gonna, was there any, I was gonna go to the frequently asked questions document too, or?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
I have a question, Robert. Oh, Mr. Burt.
I do have a question for Mr. Usker. Could you, for the board, just give us all, and maybe it's hard to do to say average, but give us an overview of how does this program operate? Who would typically be in it? What is done? How do they get into the program? What would help someone be successful versus not successful? Because we use a lot of jargon and terms that maybe we're not all familiar with.
Yep, thank you. Good question. Comprehensive community services, we get a variety, we pull from a variety of sources. The crisis program is one of them. That's where we operate the 24/7 crisis line, phone and mobile. We get people who come in through there. We get referrals from schools, law enforcement, doctors. We do not advertise this program. We have not advertised it yet because we knew it would be a pretty popular program with individuals. So these referrals are coming from the community, from community partners as well. So the way a person would qualify is that they have to, number one, they have to meet a functional screen. That's the functional eligibility part of it. They also have to have been engaged in mental health counseling that was not useful. They essentially failed at that. So after they failed that, it could be even their therapist that said, hey, you're going to need something more than just mental health outpatient therapy as well. And it's for those with a diagnosed substance use and/or, so it can be both, mental health disorder. And that's one of the things we know. The community health assessment for the last 3 or 4 years, the community has voted that the top problems they see in Chippewa County is mental health and substance abuse. This is an issue we're seeing here in the community. We know that across the country, 200 people die every day from alcohol use. We're not even talking about all the other substances. So this is an issue that's at the forefront with the community as well when it comes to that. So the individual, like a kid would be referred to public health, who does our screening, and that's where they do the functional screen, determine eligibility. A functional screen is a pretty comprehensive tool. We're obtaining the mental health records, we're obtaining the health records, school records. It's like I said, it's a very comprehensive screening tool that this information gets pumped into, and then it gets kicked back. They're either eligible or they're not eligible for the program. And after that occurs, then they're placed, hopefully not on the waiting list, which we're not supposed to have them, but if they are, then they're referred to a service facilitator who will do the intake. We'll look at it, we'll determine financial eligibility. That's one of the things I think happens downstairs in public health. Do they have Medicaid? Are they Medicaid eligible? And from there, they go through, there's 5 things that have to be completed prior to us being able to bill. There's going to be mental status exam, which is done by the clinician, so they actually talk to the individual as well. They've got their checklist they have to go through. There's a prescription from a physician, so we have to get a prescription from a physician for them. And then there's 3 other. There's the consent for treatment form, and I think a couple other just paperworky things. And then from there, they would meet with the service facilitator, and they start talking about getting a team together for this individual. Who's going to be on the team? Is it going to be the service facilitator? Parents, usually parents are always on it for children. It could be individuals from the school. It's going to be the mental health therapists, people that know them and who they want on it, on this team. And then they start talking about, they look at the assessment and what are the areas of need. And it's always based on any services that are authorized are based on that assessed need that the clinician has to approve as well. And from there, they would authorize a certain number of units for that individual to engage in that service. So it could be mental health counseling, it could be medication management, it could be daily living skills, peer mentoring. There's, as I mentioned on that frequently asked questions document, where I list all the service area items. So, and then from there, then services are authorized, and then they should have fairly frequent meetings. At a minimum, they should be meeting every 6 months. And we're hoping, and that's one thing we're pushing with the wraparound approach too, people should be meeting more frequently to determine is what the services they have in place, are they being effective? Are they seeing some improvement? Because if they're not, we just don't want to keep on doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So that's the purpose of that. And I do want to kind of toot our own horn right now. This is just something I wanted to mention. We had our Medicaid audit where we ended up, I forget, was it 75 pounds of paper we ended up having to ship down to Madison? It was over $15 million claims were gone over. We ended up, looks like we're going to have to pay back $2,700 out of all those claims. And we're going to push back on that $2,700. So our quality assurance efforts are working well in regards to that program. As far as we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as far as Medicaid allowable services, and we're following the rules of the program. So that's CCS, and then what we talk about is an individual is going to get to the point where they don't need services. That's the whole point of CCS, is getting people up and running in their recovery so they can manage their own recovery. I think I need this. I think I need that. I need to get the counseling more frequently. And that's the whole purpose of CCS. That's why we don't want it to be a long-term support. So some of the people had to move to, we found a few of the adults, they'd end up having to go to the community support program because we found that their mental illness was more severe than we initially thought. So then they end up having to go to the community support program, which is more intensive, and they're going to probably need a case manager for the rest of their, the remainder of their lives, oftentimes in CSP. So that's kind of CCS. Does that kind of help? Can
I follow up with that?
Yeah.
So even to dumb it down even more, somebody has a mental health issue, whether it's at school, police, whatever, they're referred eventually to Chippewa County, and then they meet with people, professionals, and there's a plan given to them to get them hopefully through this in 2 years and get them back out on their own.
Correct.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
So again, per the numbers at the last meeting, there was roughly 750 people serviced last year, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong on that. Ballpark.
I've got some additional information on that as well.
Okay.
Because it's much more. That was a point in time.
Okay.
And that point in time did not accurately reflect everybody. The accurate number was 1,042 people
Okay. So
that served.
About double, roughly. I guess a question I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask is, so that would be, okay, let's say 13,500 roughly per person if that was the 19 million.
$16,947 per person per year.
Where is that going?
That is going to a variety of services. So for service planning, that's with providers, $610,000 was spent on that. And this is for all 9 counties.
What is service planning?
Service planning, Jess, could you explain what that is on the service array?
So service planning is done primarily by the county service facilitator because they're billing through CCS as well. So that's their coordination, that's the organization, that's making connections, referrals to providers. It's talking with the consumer in between, how are things going, how are your services going? So planning for this.
That's the county time, the county workers' time that's being billed there.
Okay.
So then we have diagnostic evaluations, $147,000. Medication management, $342,000. Physical health monitoring, $115,000. Peer support, $286,000. Individual skill development and enhancement. This is $5,897,000. Employment-related skill training, primarily adults, $291,000. Psychoeducation, psychotherapy for family, $2,700,000. Wellness management, $731,000. Psychotherapy, $1,335,000. Substance abuse treatment, $136,000. And then travel for all the providers, that comes to $4,562,000. Should be noted, like counties like Polk that are way up away from everything, their travel costs are pretty high for providers. Like their travel cost would be $1,030,000. Chippewa, of course, we're the highest of all the counties. Buffalo's total was $240,000. Burnett was $286,000. Chippewa was $1,230,000. Dunn, $400,000. Pepin, $135,000. Pierce was $391,000. Polk was $1,030,000. Rusk, $383,000. Washburn was $467,335. So that's where that all added up. Mileage is a total, it comes up to $4 million, 45. So if you take that, if you kind of take that out of the mix even and make it more of a medical model, or it's because people are going to where they live in the community. So if you take that out of the mix, that's going to drop that even more. Where if somebody's going to psychotherapy at $200, $300 a week, you're looking at, that's roughly $1,200 a month, which is, I don't know, what is 1,700 divided by, what average cost per consumer is $1,412 per month.
I have more questions, but I'm going to yield to Mr. Romeyer.
Yeah, George.
as a Chippewa County supervisor, I also have a responsibility to my constituents, to listen to them and sometimes make hard decisions, reasonable decisions, to gather the facts, the vetted facts, the information, and then move on from there. If we're not going to supply these positions, then what we're doing is we're starving these departments. We're not giving them adequate tools to work with. And what I've found, my little over a year on the county board, these departments are all well managed. I haven't found one that I can find any criticism with. My job isn't to micromanage these. My job is to make difficult decisions. And especially in the mental health field, my family has experienced that a few times. And what are we going to do? Haul them out in the woods, let these people die? I think we need to act humane and make humane decisions. I think that this is a good move, and I fully support it.
Supervisor Romeyer. Or excuse me, Bowman. Bowman.
I would like to say that I support this as well. It's expensive, it's money, but there are human beings here, and putting a price on somebody's, the value of a human being is pretty hard to do. And to say that it costs $25,000 to attend to a person who has needs, if anybody's been to the hospital recently, that's 3 or 4 days in the hospital. This is money well spent in the long term if we're able to be proactive, get involved and get in front of these things so that they only cost us $25,000. And abandoning the people of the county and the region by not addressing the mental health issues that people have clearly stated as a need is neglect. So again, I support this, and I think it's an important step to move forward.
Supervisor Ives.
Yeah, I'd also like to say, with COVID and everything, it just really became more apparent that more people suffer from mental illness and substance use than has been noted prior to that. And we know that if it goes undiagnosed or there's not services. I mean, we're struggling all over the place with jobs everywhere. Mental health providers, you think people have to travel further to get some services if they need more, or they're not going out there, so it's costing more money having to get chaptered and going into the hospital to get more acute needs met versus having a strong program like this where you can actually have the support that you need because you can't find it sometimes, and to get on your feet, because when you struggle with mental health and or substance use, it's hard first to ask for help, but then to find it and find that support so you can get on your feet and be more productive. And I just think that this is a great service that we offer the people in our community, so they can be healthier and live more productive lives and not cost us more money if, these needs are unmet.
Supervisor Berg.
Yes, I agree with Carrie, Charles, and George have said. What we provide, what the county provides, is extremely helpful to all the people in need. And I've known from my own personal experiences, I have dealt with mental health issues. I've contemplated some dark things in my past that, I'm very happy I'm here today. And I am very much in support of all these resolutions that we are about to pass here. So I appreciate what everyone else said so far. So thank you.
Supervisor Studenberg.
I don't think there's any debate as to whether or not we're all in favor of getting help to persons who need it, but I think we all need to be responsible stewards of tax dollars, regardless of state, local, or federal. And I look at Chippewa County and its 22 departments. 3 alone have 18 people or more. 14 people or more. The ask is now for more persons added to this than 19 other departments have in total. That's a lot of people. And from a logistical standpoint, where do we put these people? Where do they work? I understand that it's fully funded, whatever verbiage you want to use, but as it was brought up by Supervisor Steele in the past, we all pay taxes and it all comes from a big pot, the American people. So I'm not arguing the fact that there's a mental health issue in our community. I'm not arguing that we help people, but I'm asking from the information presented last week, whether it was 750 or 1,400, whatever it was, we anticipate adding 50 people to that based on what was provided, last month. How does 50 additional persons potentially projected equate to 14 positions? And where do we put 14 people? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Should I answer the housing, the offices?
If you go ahead.
So for CCS and CLTS, what we have now is everybody's going to be a work from home. It's going to be permanent work from home. We have 16 offices here that's going to be available for individuals when they come into the office. So that's going to take care of CCS and children's long-term support. Everybody who works here will be a permanent telecommuter with the option to work in the office if they have to print documents and so forth. So we will have plenty of office space for that. So the fiscal positions, the 2 account assistants, they will also be working from home. They're heads down keyers. That's what they're doing. They're keying in invoices every day. It's an ideal position. We can track productivity very easily from home on that position. The accountant will be here. So we're combining 2 individuals will be working together in an office, and we have freed up that one office. The administrative assistant position, again, that's going to be a work from home, permanent telecommuter position, as well as the contracts person. So that takes care of all 14 positions. The only one that will be housed here will be the one accountant.
Supervisor Mueller?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little insight as to, from a law enforcement perspective, back in the day, a lot of times these people out there who were, for example, off their medications or whatever, causing some kind of disturbance, generally attracted the attention of law enforcement. Law enforcement responds, they deal with the person. Sometimes they don't know the person is, off meds or whatever. A lot of times they're violent. A lot of times the person just, but the thing is, and this happened to me a lot, I started dealing with the same people time and time again because there was nowhere to put it, nowhere for them. This was back in the days when they used to have state hospitals where you could just send them. Well, in the late 70s, they shut most of them down. So they all wound up back on the street. And in my case, like I say, we dealt with that day in, day out. And just saying, I'm grateful to, the Human Services Division, the social workers. I know there used to be a little bit of picking and fighting between them, but, or a little here and there. But by and large, most officers are grateful for that. I think I certainly was, even though I maybe didn't always express it. But just to give you an idea that, that's kind of what law enforcement's left with on their own. They don't have necessarily the tools to recognize exactly what they're dealing with. They see someone violent, they take away the threat, whatever that threat is. So just saying, from an old cop's perspective anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Bergeron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This position and many following, looking through the different forms and your presentation to the executive committee, they're mandated by state statute, correct?
Correct.
And it relates to not having waiting lists and serving the community. If the chair would allow, could you explain what happens if we end up with waiting lists and how levy could then potentially be impacted?
I don't know if levy will actually be impacted.
Okay.
When they talk about citing us, I don't want to cause hysteria and say we're going to be losing money. Because I don't see, nobody's ever gotten that far. They could pull our, so the last time we had a waiting list, they only certified us for 1 year. We didn't get to 2-year certification. What happens? Could they pull the program eventually? I don't know. Nobody's ever gotten that far, and I don't think they've never told us what the next steps are after you get your initial citation, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
Supervisor Seidlitz, you have a question?
Yeah, obviously mental health's a bad deal, but just had a couple questions here because just looking at the graph, like 56% of the people leave your program between either moving out of the county, or they decide to end this, or then they're also unable to contact them. Then you got like 33% no longer need it. Do you follow back up with that 33%? Because obviously that's just from 2022 that you discharged them, right?
Correct.
Follow back up in 2023 to see if these people go back into the system.
I don't know of any longevity studies. We would know if they came back. I don't know, Jess, if we're seeing many returns or.
Yeah, we have a survey that we send out 6 months post-discharge. It's a state survey that is required for us to use. We're not able to change it. It's very, very long, which results in people not returning it. So we get very few surveys after the fact. And it's a survey we have to use. It's a required survey by the state.
Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Bishop?
Well, I think my question got answered. You had mentioned earlier about a waiting list, so I just wanted to clarify what that was. Obviously, that's a bad situation, but I agree. I'm in favor. It is expensive, and it is a lot of people. If I remember the motion correctly, though, it was hired based on need.
Correct.
So we weren't going to hire 15 people tomorrow.
Nope.
Start with one, maybe two positions.
When we have a full caseload, that's when we hire.
Okay.
So if the need drops off or where the referrals stop, we're not going to hire people. And there is no pool of money sitting there because we bill based off of Medicaid. We bill as they provide service. So
you're asking us to authorize if a need arises that you have the authority to create that position and go forward.
the fiscal positions, those would be hired January 1st, because those are what we need as a result of the growth within the consortium to continue to be able to process invoices and so forth. But the service facilitators themselves are not hired until there's a caseload for them to take on. And the one thing I was going to say too, and I know there's the county alongside of us that gets a lot of press. And I'll tell you what, everybody I talk to, that's not how we operate, especially in the Children's Long-Term Support Program. If you look at the frequently asked questions document, Children's Long-Term Support is a different program from CCS. Children's Long-Term Support is for those kids that have a physical disability or a developmental disability. So it's not services as much. There can be, but a lot of times we're providing home modifications, ramps, wheelchair ramps, just things that allow that kid to be a part of the family and remain in the home. Parents still have to purchase things because they're still parents. There's things that they need to purchase just because they're parents, their clothes and so forth. It's any of those adaptive equipment, special therapeutic things that they need to live in the home as well. So that's a difference between Children's Long-Term Support. But we hear a lot. We hear from people that have transferred Montclair that's saying, well, they used to buy this, they used to buy that, and we're going, that's not a waiver allowable thing. And part of it was that they were buying high chairs so that they would match the woodwork in the kitchen. That's fine. We buy a basic high chair. So if Supervisor Romeyer says, I want the special one, that matches my woodwork, well, it's not $200, it's $300, and you're going to have to pay the extra $100. Fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. Then we only purchase the basic necessities as is waiver allowable. We're not going that. We're not paying for pools. We're not paying for vacations for people. We're not doing upgrades at conferences for service facilitators, on planes, I should say. I've done transports on planes, and to be perfectly honest, I don't mind when the kid has to sit across the aisle from me because I get a little bit of a break, but that's kind of so I'm not going to do an upgrade for that. But we do things by the book here, and I know one of the things we look at on our service providers, 95% of our service providers in CCS try to do the right thing. 5% end up putting some things on their rate sheet that just catch our eye. And I know Paul does a really good job of saying, hey, somebody's got a brand new Suburban that they put the whole thing on their rate sheet. And we're like, no, it's like the IRS rules. What portion of that vehicle are you using for your business? That is what can be written off. It's not, and you can't use your whole home It's the portion of that that's IRS allowable. What portion is your home office? We try to be very vigilant, and I've said this before, is I'm not going to be a part of a fleecing of America, where we're paying for a $500 toilet seat or a $300 hammer. You know, I don't want to be a part of that. And I want to be very good stewards of the money that we're entrusted with as well. And that's why we try to watch what's going on with this stuff closely.
Supervisor McGill.
Can you explain, as Chippewa County is the leader of this consortium, can you explain how we are reassured that we are recouping all the incidental costs with regards to these employees?
Oh,
So,
well, so are you talking about CCS? Or are you talking about like the whole program of CCS, or our function as a lead county?
both.
Okay, I think Paul? Yeah. I heard enough I could answer, but I know I'm gonna say something.
Yeah. No, we're doing the 2024 budget right now, and part of the budget process is we're given the personnel cost report, for example, which employee by employee, wages, salary, insurance, fringe benefits, everything of that nature. And then as we build out our budget, the ones that are the comprehensive community services or CLTS or any other program, they're in a specific cost center, a set of accounting accounts, where those costs are captured based on what we do. So when it's time to look at this program at the end of the year, we know who worked in it, exactly how much they got paid, not an average number, but specifically got paid to that particular person. We know what those costs are. When we buy anything, any kind of service, pay for any service, a good, any kind of a bill that comes in, I mean, that's kind of what accountants do. We slice and dice, and what program used this, and who does it get charged to? So, and we have an entire set of books that are in balance related to comprehensive community services because it's so big, and we're so concerned that we are capturing all the costs for this, so the things from the outside aren't getting blended in. So we spend a lot of time making sure every program gets charged with what its costs were and not any other costs.
And I think some of your costs, you want to speak to the indirects as well?
Yeah, and we talked about the indirect costs. Those were, again, the costs that the county pays on behalf of human services. They provide us this big wing of the building. They heat it, they cool it. The county sends people around to pick up the waste baskets. The lights come on in the morning when we come in. And an outside accountant comes in and looks at those costs that the county pays for and says, how much was attributable to DHS? How much was attributable to the highway department, to the court system, to everybody? Slice, 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 slice. And they send a slice to DHS, and they specifically call out the slice that belongs to comprehensive community services. Again, because it's such a big thing, it gets its own special allocation of those costs, and we charge those to the program.
Thank you.
So typically, like, even we're getting a piece of Randy's time, anything, even though he's getting paid from the county, he's getting paid, we will recoup additional funds for the time that he spent in CCS. HR, if they're tracking their time. Corp counsel, when they're going through counsel, they're tracking their time, and they're attributing that to CCS, so we're recouping that. And one of the things that we did find is that new computers, new laptops that were being purchased, which is typically IT, we have to purchase the new ones, but replacements would be by IT, and we started realizing, hey, that's one thing we're missing. We're not attributing the laptops, the new computers for CCS to CLTS. So that's one thing that I think Supervisor Steele is what called us on this, and we had a meeting and we started talking about stuff, and that was one of the things we realized we were missing. There's only so many buckets out there that we can charge, and I think we're accounting for all of them at this point. Like I said, we did come up with the laptop one, and if one comes up, I don't know what it'd be, because we've got most of the big ones hit.
Okay, Supervisor Steele.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one,
That's yours.
I've had it said to me, if we don't do this, we're gonna have a waiting list and we're gonna get fined. I've heard that word fine for forever. Now I'm hearing, maybe not. Now, and I also heard that we're gonna put these people on when we need them. Well, aren't we circumventing the process tonight? Why don't we just go ahead and say, let's give them permission to hire 8 of every one of those. That way you won't have to come back and see us for quite a while. No, it don't work that way. And if it's a fully funded position, okay, those positions, who cares whether they're in the budget or not? Money coming in, money going out, same person. It's not costing the county anything. So there's a lot of confusion on the information, and I'd rather stick to the process. Hire 4 people for one job, but they're only gonna hire 1. That way, they got 3 in their pocket, so they don't have to come see us. I'm not saying they're gonna abuse it, but what I'm saying is, the process to do it is to come to county board and get it okay to hire when you want one. Not 3 or 4 at a time. Thank you.
I was just going to respond and just say the one thing is that I've never used the word, if you were referring to me, I've never used the word fined. I've only used the word cited. I never ever told anybody that we were going to be fined. And that one I will take an oath on. The only word I've ever used is cited. And I never knew what that meant.
Supervisor Tudor.
I just have one final question, I guess. Prior to becoming eligible for this program, how is the billing done? How is, prior to someone becoming eligible for this services, how is the billing done? Are they retroactively billed for services they received prior to the program? How is it?
It's through reconciliation.
Which means
At the end, well, all of our costs then that we've incurred, because we can't bill Medicaid at that time, but all the costs that go into the program, into running the program, gets put into the reconciliation at the end.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked about that, and we've referred to this as billing Medicaid, right? And this reconciliation, which comes later. We bill Medicaid as specific services are rendered, and through that process, we get back about 75% of the entire program during the year. There's many other costs for which a specific service was never billed. A big chunk of myself. I don't provide service to clients. I'm in back office, but a good chunk of my time goes to this program. The billers and people like that, at the end of the year, we report our total costs. Staff that provided direct service to clients, staff that did back office support functions, people like me, providers out in the community, all those costs we report to Medicaid. We spent $20 million. The consortium spent $20 million. We got paid $15 million already on the fee-for-service billing. And then the reconciliation is they say, here's the other $5 million. And we're made whole through those 2 pieces. The monthly billings and the payment to make us whole on the totality of our costs.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Stay up here, Paul. Can you talk about we get the money up front? Can you speak about that? Because now it sounds like we're up fronting the money and then we're getting reimbursed. So
$5 million we get from the county or from the
Yeah, this reconciliation process has been a thing for other programs that had nothing to do with this. And you receive it a year in December of the year after the year that you deliver the service, long time into the future, and it was small amounts of money. When this program came into existence for us, it became a big chunk of money. So the state gives us an advance. We received an advance in March of 2023 of $4.5 million to cover the reconciliation for 2023. They give us the cash up front. We still go through the reconciliation process and true it up at the end of 24, but they are funding that money in advance. The funding, I did, I took an interest in that, just to give you, at 509, I was looking at this today. We've received $8.9 million from Medicaid this year. I mentioned we have money on deposit from our partners to pay these contracted providers. We have $1,467,000 here at the county in our account on behalf of our partners.
And that's what we call our working capital.
That's our working capital. So, and our bills that we paid as of today is $10,185,000. If you add the two, the $1.5 million and the $9 million or whatever it is, we have, at this moment in time, we have $274,000 excess cash in our account that ebbs and flows. We do things like have fiscal staff so we can stay current on our billing. That's why the fiscal staff we're asking for, by the way, is so important. If we're tardy in our billing, cash goes out the door faster than it comes in. So as this thing grows, we need to keep billing. That's one of my big jobs, is to, help with that. So that's how the finances work.
The only other thing I would add is with the position that Supervisor Steele was talking about. We've done this in the past, had positions available, so DHS could hire them so we don't get the waiting list. That was a big push. So that's the reason we do it. We can't hire them all up front because unless they're providing service, we can't get reimbursed for their expenditures. So they have to provide a service to get reimbursed. We can't just have them, they're going to pay it. They have to do something. So.
Just direct answer to Rob's question. So if, as part of that intake process, if there's nothing to bill, it goes into that general pool of funds. That's the direct answer to your question.
Seeing no other questions, we will move to the vote.
Yes. Yes.
Unless we want to order out for breakfast.
Did I hop?
Okay. Okay, going back to the resolution then, 3123. We will call the vote. Those in favor, push green. Those opposed, press red. Cool.
I just gave you new batteries.
Grab it.
Want to borrow my hammer?
Change it.
Oh, yeah.
I got it.
Did I not have it on
Is
tight?
that another battery?
Oh, no, that's just the cover.
Maybe I didn't have it on. Oh, we're gonna give you a new one.
Technology makes things faster, right?
Oh, maybe. Just thought I did them the same way the other one was.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Work to let them speak.
Sometimes it works, man.
Give that a shot.
Threaten it. Just threaten it.
Did that work? No?
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I have my
Fix
pen.
people like I can fix that.
My pen?
Right here.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Oh,
There.
when we-
Okay. Call it.
I gotta find it. Right screen. 13 yes, 5 no.
Okay, resolution passes. Resolution 3223, to create 2 social worker positions in Department of Human Services.
Resolution 32-23, resolution to create 2 social worker positions in the Department of Human Services in 2024 to provide children long-term support services to children. Now therefore be it resolved that effective January 1, 2024, 2 full-time social worker positions are hereby created in the Children, Youth, and Families Division, Children with Differing Abilities Unit of the Department of Human Services to ensure children receive services as they become enrolled in the CLTS program. And be it further resolved that these positions be filled after January 1, 2024, and when consumer numbers dictate additional social worker positions are needed to meet demand in the CLTS program. And be it further resolved that these positions shall be funded by Medicaid revenue generated by the positions. And be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund these positions no longer be available or be reduced significantly, these positions may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process, forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
Romeyer moves.
Berg seconds.
Berg, second. Okay. Discussion.
So as I was explaining previously, this is children's long-term support. This is for children with a physical or developmental disability. And this is a program that I talked about that we provide a lot of items. We purchase a lot of things, adaptive aids and so forth, to keep children in the home. So this is different from CCS. The caseloads are a little higher, you know, roughly about 45 people, kids per caseload and so forth. So a little different program. It's not the mental health and substance abuse. But again, fully funded Medicaid program where we're not allowed to have a wait list.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, we will then call the vote. Okay. Those in favor, press green. Opposed, red. Can release.
15 yes, 3 no.
Okay. Resolution 3323.
Resolution number 33-23, resolution to create 4 social worker positions in the Children with Differing Abilities Division of the Department of Human Services in 2024 to provide comprehensive community services for children. Now therefore be it resolved that effective January 1, 2024, 4 full-time social worker positions are hereby created in the Children with Differing Abilities Division of the Department of Human Services to provide CCS services to serve consumers as they become eligible and to avoid a wait list. And be it further resolved that these positions be filled after January 1, 2024, and when consumer numbers dictate additional CCS social workers are needed. And be it further resolved that these positions shall be funded by using the Medicaid revenue generated by these positions, as well as the CCS reconciliation process. And be it further resolved that commencing in 2024, the Department of Human Services shall utilize the Medicaid revenue from state and federal funding sources to permanently fund these positions. And be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund these positions no longer be available or be reduced significantly, these positions may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Ives will make that motion.
Ives, is there a second?
Bishop will second.
This is the program we've been talking about. These are 4 for children and will be filled for the CCS program and will be filled as we need them.
Any questions?
I don't know what's going on with this.
Oh, okay.
You can clear me out. I'm gonna mail my votes.
Technological difficulty.
I don't know.
It's fine. Just clear me out.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, then we will call the vote. You ready? Green to approve, red to disapprove. release?
13 yes, 5 no.
Okay, resolution passes. Resolution 3423.
Resolution 34-23, resolution to create an accountant position in 2024 to provide fiscal services for the provision of comprehensive community services through the Recovery and Wellness Consortium. Now therefore be it resolved that effective on January 1, 2024, one accountant DHS position is hereby created to work in the fiscal division of the Department of Human Services to support the growth in the CCS program in the Recovery and Wellness Consortium. And be it further resolved that this position will provide direct support to the CCS lead county fiscal team and will therefore be funded by using the Medicaid revenue generated by those positions as well as the CCS reconciliation process. And be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund this position no longer be available or be reduced significantly, this position may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
More motions.
Is there a second?
Bergeron seconds.
Okay, discussion.
Again, this is for our, an accountant for our duties as a lead county agency here for comprehensive community services. This is the one position that will be housed here in Chippewa. And based on the numbers, it is very much needed at this point.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none, then we will call the vote. Set. Okay, those in favor, press green. Those not, press red. Yep.
12 yes, 6 no.
Okay, resolution passes. Resolution 3523.
Resolution 35-23, resolution to create the position of Contract Management and Relations Coordinator in the Recovery and Wellness Consortium for the provision of comprehensive services. Now therefore be it resolved that effective January 1, 2024, one full-time RWC Contract Management and Relations Coordinator position is hereby created in the Department of Human Services to provide services to the Recovery and Wellness Consortium, CCS providers, and be it further resolved that this position shall be funded by using the Medicaid revenue generated by this position, as well as the CCS reconciliation process, and be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund these positions no longer be available or be reduced significantly, these positions may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I just makes that motion.
Okay. Bishop second. Okay, discussion.
As we mentioned in the resolution, right now we have all hands on deck in the fiscal department. Everybody's doing everything. We've got an accountant that is currently fulfilling these duties at this point. This position does not need to be we do not need to be paying an accountant to be a contract. But what is even more critical as these providers grow, right now we have 125 contracted providers. And this is going to be the individual who's kind of a lifeline, who brings new providers on, who's going to be helping review on the rate sheets and so forth. And the accountant is going to actually be able to do accountant duties. So that's the purpose of the contracts person.
Okay, any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, we will then call the vote. Those in favor, press green. Opposed, red. Ready? Roger? Okay, there it is.
12 yes, 6 no.
Okay, resolution passes. Okay, number 9, Resolution 3623.
Resolution number 36-23, resolution to create an administrative assistant 3 position in the Department of Human Services to provide administrative support to the Recovery Wellness Consortium. Now therefore be it resolved that effective January 1, 2024, a full-time administrative assistant 3 position is hereby created in the Department of Human Services to provide support to the RWC to help address the growth in the CCS program, and be it further resolved that this position will provide direct support to RWC lead county team and will therefore be funded by using the Medicaid revenue generated by the position as well as the CCS reconciliation process, and be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund this position no longer be available or be reduced significantly, this position may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
Romeyer moves.
Is there a second?
Berg will second.
Okay, discussion.
The addition of the administrative assistant position is going to be critical in freeing up some of the time for the lead county operations administrator, Jessica, the clinician, lead social worker, as well as the RWC IT staff and fiscal team. Somewhere along about 25 years ago, we got to the point where we started doing away with administrative assistants and started having the other professionals start thinking it was a good idea to be typing up the reports, doing other things like this. Administrative assistants have they're trained, they have a real specific function, and it's a real critical and important function to play in an organization. It frees up the time for some of the other folks to be able to do some of the things that we hired them for. And we're at the point now where we really need an administrative assistant to pick up some of that additional, free up some of that time of our other folks.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, then we'll call the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove. Okay.
12 yes, 6 no.
Okay, resolution passes. Resolution 3723.
Resolution 37-23, resolution to create 2 account assistant positions in the Department of Human Services to provide fiscal support to the Recovery Wellness Consortium. Now therefore be it resolved that effective in January 2024, 2 account assistant positions are hereby created in the fiscal division of the Department of Human Services to provide fiscal support to the RWC and address the growth in the CCS program. And be it further resolved that these positions be filled after January 1, 2024, and when consumer numbers indicate that another account assistant position is needed. And be it further resolved that these positions will provide direct support to the CCS lead county fiscal team and will therefore be funded by using the Medicaid revenue generated by the positions as well as the CCS reconciliation process. And be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund these positions no longer be available or be reduced significantly, these positions may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Ives.
And second by
Berg will second.
Berg. Okay, discussion.
So these are the account assistant positions that I previously referenced. These are the head-down keyers. They're actually doing the billing portion for us, doing the line-by-line invoices, pumping it into Medicaid. These are really critical positions, and these will be full-time telecommuters.
Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, then we will call the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove.
$12 yes, 6 no.
Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time, too.
Okay, resolution 3823.
Resolution number 38-23, resolution to restructure the shared deputy county clerk veteran services specialist position to a full-time deputy county clerk position. Now therefore be it resolved that effective January 1, 2024, the shared deputy county clerk veteran services specialist position is hereby restructured to a full-time deputy county clerk position in the county clerk's office. And be it further resolved that the part-time veteran services specialist is hereby eliminated effective January 1, 2024. And be it further resolved that the full-time deputy county clerk position shall have the job duties and responsibilities as set out in the attached job description. And be it further resolved, the current deputy clerk veteran services specialist be the new full-time deputy county clerk. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Let's trace. Okay, I'll put Steele for the motion. Who?
Erickson will second.
Half dozen that answered second. Okay.
Strong second. Strong second. With purpose.
Okay. Discussion.
You want me to, I'll cover this, and then if I miss anything, Jackie can correct me. Jackie and Peter really did the heavy lifting on this. My only concern was to make sure there wasn't any reduction in service to our veterans. Veterans have a special place in my heart, and really wanted to make sure that that didn't happen. They did a great job doing an analysis on service and service needs, and it really, bottom line, boils down to Peter is very efficient on how he provides his service. Instead of having 3 or 4 meetings, he can get things done in one or over the phone. And there is an increase, as you all know, in the clerk's office with elections, and that's increased not just for the next one, they'll have 4, but they always seem like they're adding something to that. So in this, in a rare occasion, actually frees up about $6,500 in levy that's going back to the rest of the county. So we appreciate that. I don't know if I missed anything.
No, just the one thing I would say is Peter wanted to be here tonight, but he was just elected to a property board for his church, and tonight was the first time they were meeting, so he felt like he could not miss that meeting. But him and I have had many conversations. He was at the executive committee. The chair did ask if he was behind it. He did say yes, so the exec committee did hear him say that. His one concern is that he will miss talking to Amanda on the days that she's in there. I said, she's just down the hall. He can come visit. But we did, as Randy said, we did look at the traffic for the last year in both offices to really evaluate where the need was. And right now it looks like there is a shift in that. So we will take any questions.
And I have 2 letters from other clerks supporting it.
I did put them on the tables, and I think you might have received some emails or phone calls as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we have a part-time clerk here that came to talk today. And I can imagine, for a part-time clerk, the questions that they'd have. And I've worked at Stanley for the elections, and I've worked at Halley for the elections. They have full-time clerks, and they've got questions all the time, especially with, how fluid this is with the elections now. So I just think it's absolutely needed. And again, if a full-time clerk has questions, I just can't imagine what these poor township clerks are doing. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Further discussion? Then we will call the vote. Those in favor, press green. Disapprove, press red.
Sorry, wait, not quite there. Now.
Okay, now you can vote.
Now you-
Okay. Yep.
18 yes, 0 no. Thank you.
Okay, HR policy revisions, first reading. Tony.
First reading. All right, so couple updates. I'll go as fast as I can. First one is the comp plan, or the comp system policy, and a lot of it's just language. So the new salary schedule that Carlson and Detman put through has a change to the middle column instead of position point to control point. So that's the reason for the language change on that first page of the policy. It's normally a more of a standard. On the second page is the annual employee wage adjustments. The section on maximum was stricken, and there's a couple other things I'll point out that are stricken because the recommendation is if somebody reaches maximum, the current policy reads that they will get a non-base bonus equal to the amount of the approved across-the-board increase. So tonight you approved up to 3%. In the old policy, it would have meant that in next July, if they were at max, they would get a 3% bonus. They would get 2080 times their current rate of pay. Now they'll be capped at the maximum, but the difference that we're going to be doing is we're going to be analyzing that salary schedule every year. So what the board approved tonight in the resolution is that next year it'll move by 1%. So they'll get a chance to move by 1% because the maximum will move at 1%. So that'll be dependent each year on the market and what you guys approve and what's recommended. So that's the reason for that change. The next page 3 also just has a lot of language change for the control point versus position point. Page 5, the salary schedule, in coordination with a third party, the third party consultant, we will make a recommendation, the county administrator will make a recommendation on if that should move. And again, this year, the recommendation is 1%. It might depend. Some years it could have been 3% or it could be 0.5%. So that'll come, and if that's approved by the board, it'd be effective the following July 1st. The next section is related to the maximum. So like I said earlier, it's adding specificity under the salary placement if somebody is at maximum. Page 6 is the board approved the resolution for funding for the shift differential. This would be the policy language. And so it would apply to those that are in emergency communications and in the jail. If they're working the hours between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., they'd be eligible for that $1 an hour on that shift. That's a recruitment issue, and we think that that will reward them for working that off shift. Then we'll scroll to page 9. This was not related to the wage study. This has been on the tickler. If next time we bring policies to the board, in our meals section of our reimbursement, this was something that was not caught. And so the recommendation by our chief deputy in the sheriff's department was to make sure we add work-related transports. So right now, if somebody is doing a transport and they're doing it, going across state, we don't have a meal reimbursement option for policy, so this will allow them to get paid for lunch for meals as they do a transport. And last is benefits. In the EAP section, we use Real Living for our employee assistance program. They also offer extra services. One of the things they offer is coaching, so they offer counseling. They offer 4 free sessions or coaching sessions. There are times we would never require somebody to do counseling, but we might require them to do some coaching. They also offer some mediation between departments or interdepartment. And what we decided, or what we would like the board to support, is allowing employees to be paid if it's required. And so if there's mediation due to disagreements or due to some issues, they would get paid for that time with the Real Living mediator. And so that would be the only time that they would get paid. If they'd had counseling or their personal issues going on and they wanted that personally, they would do that on their own time with PTO or after hours. Any questions?
Okay, it's first reading. We do not have to vote on this. So then we'll go to the adjournment.
Erickson will make that motion.
And count on it. Yeah.
Count on that.
And who will second? Joel. And then approve, press 3.
Just push your button.
The German, I got that.
No, they just.
Make sure you push your button. Stay.
I'll be on for today.
There we go. Oh, well. Everyone's.
Okay. We are adjourned.